The twin suns were burning high over the red sands of Valora when Jason walked through the alien market. The air was thick with dust, strange smells, and the sound of hundreds of voices shouting prices in different tongues. Around him, alien traders sold everything, from metal scraps to glowing fruits, from rusted starship parts to living animals inside glass cages. Jason had seen many markets across the galaxy, but this one felt different. There was something cruel in the air, something heavy that made his chest tighten. He was just passing through looking for fuel cells for his transport ship, but the noise pulled him deeper inside the crowd. Then, one voice rose above all others. "Buy a cow, get a working woman for free," shouted a thick, green-skinned alien farmer standing on a wooden stage. His 4 arms waved proudly over 2 creatures standing behind him, a weak, bony cow and a young alien woman with silver-blue skin and chains on her wrists. The crowd laughed. Some clapped. Others pointed and joked. Jason stopped walking. He thought he had heard wrong, but the sign behind the farmer said it clearly, written in big yellow letters, "Special deal, 1 cow, 1 female worker, 1 price." Jason's jaw tightened. He had heard of slave markets on distant worlds, but never like this. Not this open, not this casual. The alien woman stood perfectly still beside the cow, her eyes down, her long white hair tangled and dusty. Her clothes were torn, her bare feet pressed against the hot metal floor. She looked more like a shadow than a person. The farmer's deep voice continued. "Strong worker, barely eats, obeys orders, comes free with every cow purchase." The crowd roared with laughter again. Jason's hands curled into fists. He was a traveler, not a hero, but something inside him broke. He had seen too much suffering already. Too many people pretending not to see. He pushed forward through the crowd until he stood right in front of the stage. The farmer's grin faded a little when he noticed the human. "You can't be serious," Jason said firmly. His voice cut through the noise. "You're selling a person?" The farmer blinked, then laughed, showing yellow teeth. "Person? No, human. Worker. Property, farm helper. She's lucky I feed her." Jason's anger grew. "She's not property. She's alive," the crowd began to whisper. Some aliens turned curious. Others stepped back. It wasn't common for a human to challenge a Valoran merchant, especially not here in their own world. The farmer leaned closer, towering over him. "You must be new here. On Valora, labor is trade. We grow, we sell, we survive. That's how it works. You don't like it, you can walk away." Jason didn't move. He looked at the alien woman again. Her eyes met his for a second. Bright silver eyes full of quiet fear and something else. Shame, maybe, or hope. Then she quickly looked down. The farmer noticed the look and smirked. "She's a good one. Works fast. Silent, too. You want her? Buy the cow and she's yours." Jason's stomach twisted. "And if I don't?" "Then get lost," the farmer snapped. "Don't ruin my business," Jason hesitated. He didn't have much money, just a few credits left for his next trip. He could walk away, pretend he hadn't seen anything. But his conscience screamed inside his head. He couldn't let this go. Not today. He took a slow breath. "How much for both?" The crowd gasped. The farmer's eyes widened. "You're buying?" Jason nodded slowly. "I'm buying," the farmer chuckled darkly. "You humans are strange. You pay for trouble. But fine, 200 credits for the cow, woman included. No returns." Jason handed over his credit chip. His hand shook slightly, but he didn't let it show. The farmer scanned it, grinning wide when the payment confirmed. "Pleasure doing business, human." Jason stepped up on the stage. The alien woman flinched when he got closer, expecting another command, maybe another strike. But Jason only said softly, "You're free now." She blinked in confusion. "Free?" she whispered. Her voice was hoarse, almost unused. Jason nodded. "Yes, you don't belong to anyone." The farmer laughed behind them. "Free? You think she'll survive out there without orders? You just wasted your money, human." Jason ignored him. He reached down, unlocked the chain on her wrist. The metal fell with a small clink. The crowd fell silent for a moment. They had never seen someone do that before. The woman looked at the broken chain, then at Jason. "Why?" she asked in a trembling voice. "Why did you do that?" Jason looked at her, his voice calm but firm. "Because nobody should be treated like that. Not you. Not anyone." She didn't speak again, but her eyes followed him as he turned to leave. For the first time, she looked unsure, like she was seeing a world she didn't understand anymore. As they walked away from the market, Jason could feel the crowd's eyes burning on his back. Some were angry, others curious. A few even seemed moved. But he knew one thing: he had just made enemies. The kind of enemies who owned this place, who wouldn't forget what he did. The alien woman walked quietly beside him, still holding the broken chain in her hand like she couldn't believe it was real. The red sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the sands gold. For Jason, the market of the unthinkable was over. But for both of them, a dangerous new journey had just begun. The sun had begun to fall behind the red cliffs when Jason and the alien woman left the marketplace. The wind carried the echoes of laughter and gossip behind them. Every step they took left shallow prints on the sand road, one heavy and steady, the other light and hesitant. Jason didn't speak for a long time. He could still feel the stares from the crowd. The farmer's mocking grin burned into his mind. He had seen cruelty before on many worlds, but this one felt personal. Maybe because for the first time, he had done something about it. The alien woman walked beside him silently, her chains gone but her fear still there. She kept her eyes low, clutching the piece of broken metal in her hand like it was proof of her freedom, or a memory she couldn't let go of. Finally, Jason broke the silence. "Do you have a name?" She didn't answer at first. The question seemed to confuse her. "Name?" she repeated softly. "Yeah," Jason said gently. "What do people call you?" The woman hesitated, then spoke so quietly he almost didn't hear it. "Lyra," Jason smiled faintly. "Lyra. That's a good name." She nodded once, still not looking at him. They reached a small rest station at the edge of the desert, a place for travelers to eat, rest, or refuel their speeders. Jason walked inside, bought 2 bowls of stew and a water jug, and sat down at a corner table. Lyra stayed near the door, unsure if she was allowed to sit. "Come on," Jason said, waving her over. "Sit down. You're safe here." She sat carefully, watching everyone around. Her silver eyes moved constantly, scanning exits, faces, and shadows. Jason noticed it. She was used to surviving, not relaxing. He pushed 1 bowl toward her. "Eat." She looked at the food, then at him. You bought me." "You can order me," she said quietly, unsure how to behave. Jason shook his head. "No, I don't own you. You can choose." Her lips trembled a little. "Choose." The word sounded strange coming from her mouth, like she hadn't said it in years. Then slowly, she picked up the spoon. The first bite seemed to surprise her. She ate carefully at first, then faster, like someone who hadn't tasted real food in a long time. Jason didn't stop her. He just watched quietly, making sure she didn't choke. After a few minutes, she looked up. "Why did you really help me?" Jason sighed. "Because I couldn't walk away." Lyra frowned, confused. "But you don't know me." "I could be dangerous," Jason gave a small smile. "Maybe, but you were chained next to a cow. Somehow I don't think you're the dangerous one." For the first time, she almost smiled. It was small, but it made her face softer. Her sharp alien features looked almost human in that moment. But the peace didn't last. 2 shadowy figures entered the rest station. Alien men with long rifles slung over their shoulders. Their eyes locked on Jason and Lyra immediately. Lyra stiffened. "Bounty hunters," she whispered. "They'll take me back." Jason's hand slowly moved to the blaster at his belt. "Let them try." The 2 hunters approached their table. One spoke in a low, rough voice. "Human, that woman belongs to Valora trade law. She's government property. You just bought stolen labor." Jason stood up calmly. "She's not property. And I didn't steal her, I paid your market," the second hunter sneered. "Then you broke our law by freeing her. She must return for processing." Lyra's hand shook. "They'll erase me," she whispered. "They'll take my memory." Jason's eyes hardened. "No one's touching her." The hunters exchanged looks. "You want trouble, human? You'll get it." Jason knew he couldn't fight them in the open, too many eyes watching. So he took a deep breath and said, "All right, if there's a problem with the trade, we'll settle it with the merchant himself. I'll meet your boss in the morning." "Fair?" The first hunter smirked. "You won't make it till morning, off-worlder." But they stepped back, deciding to follow instead of attack in front of witnesses. As the hunters left, Lyra looked at Jason with a mix of fear and disbelief. "You should have left me," she whispered. "They'll hunt you too." Jason looked at her, calm and steady. Maybe, but I already made my choice. Outside, the desert night was falling, cold, wide, and full of danger. Jason paid for a small speeder and checked his blaster's charge. Lyra wrapped herself in a worn blanket he found in the back seat. As they drove away, lights from the station faded behind them. The wind carried whispers of pursuit. Lyra sat quietly beside him, her voice soft as starlight. "You don't even know who I am," she said. Jason glanced at her, eyes focused on the horizon. "Then tell me," he replied. "But only when you're ready." She turned toward the stars. Somewhere out there, a past full of pain waited to catch up with her. But tonight, for the first time in years, she didn't feel like property. She felt seen, and beside her, a human who refused to walk away had just started a fight neither of them yet understood. The desert wind howled like a wounded creature as Jason's small speeder cut across the dunes. The night was cold now, the heat of the twin suns replaced by a biting chill. Lyra sat beside him, her white hair whipping in the wind, her silver eyes watching the endless horizon. They had been driving for hours without speaking. Behind them, far in the distance, the faint lights of the city still glowed, a reminder of what they had escaped. Jason's hands tightened on the controls. He kept scanning the skies. "We'll stop soon," he said finally. "You need rest." Lyra turned her head slowly. "They won't stop chasing," she said quietly. "You should have left me." Jason gave a small smile. "You already said that. And I already told you I don't walk away." Lyra looked down at her hands. The chain marks on her wrists were still fresh, red and bruised. She rubbed them gently, almost in disbelief that they were free. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I'm not just a worker. They want me for a reason." Jason glanced at her. "Then you'd better tell me why before it gets us both killed." Lyra hesitated, as if deciding whether she could trust him. Finally, she said, "I worked for the Valoran Science Guild. I studied human biology, secretly. They called it forbidden research. When they found out, they erased my license, destroyed my lab, and sold me as a laborer. They said I was contaminated by human sympathy." Jason frowned. "So you were punished for helping people like me?" Lyra nodded. "Humans are seen as primitive by most of Valora. My people believe compassion is weakness. But when I studied human records, I saw something they didn't. Your ability to care even for those who hurt you. I thought maybe that could save us all someday." Jason looked ahead into the dark. "And for that they enslaved you." Lyra nodded again, her voice small. "Now that you freed me, they'll see it as rebellion. The Trade Guild will want you punished too. They'll send hunters." Jason chuckled under his breath. "Let them come." The speeder hit a bump, jolting them both. He slowed down near a cluster of rocky hills. A good place to hide until sunrise. He parked the speeder behind a tall ridge and started a small fire using dry fuel packs. Lyra sat across from him, staring at the flames. The orange light reflected in her eyes. "You risked everything," she said softly. "For a stranger." Jason shrugged. "You're not a stranger anymore." For a moment, neither spoke. The fire cracked gently between them. Then Lyra said something that made Jason's heart sink. "There's a tracker in my arm." Jason looked up sharply. "What?" "They implant them in all workers. It sends a pulse every few hours to show location. I thought it was broken after so long in the market, but I felt it reactivate when we left the city." Jason stood quickly, checking the speeder's scanner. A faint signal blinked on the radar and moving fast toward them. "Damn," he muttered. "How far?" "Maybe 20 minutes, Lyra said. "We can't outrun them on this terrain." Jason grabbed his pack, pulling out a small laser tool. "Then we remove it." Lyra's eyes widened. "It's fused into my arm." "You'll hurt me." Jason met her gaze. "Better pain now than death later." "Do you trust me?" She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. Jason heated the tool, his hands steady despite the pounding in his chest. Lyra sat still, biting down on her sleeve as he worked. The smell of burnt metal and skin filled the air, but she didn't cry out. A small silver chip finally dropped into his palm, still glowing faintly. He crushed it under his boot. "Done," he said. Lyra gasped, breathing hard. Sweat ran down her temples, but her eyes shone with relief. You actually did it." Jason smiled slightly. "Told you I don't walk away." Then a sound ripped through the night, the sharp whine of an engine. Jason turned toward the dunes. A dark shape appeared in the sky, lights flashing. "A hunter drone. Get down." He shouted, the drone fired, missing by inches. Sand exploded into the air. Jason grabbed his blaster and shot back, hitting one of the rotors. The machine spun, crashed into a nearby dune, and burst into flames, but it was too late. The signal had already been sent. Lyra looked at him, panic returning. They know where we are. Jason reloaded calmly. Then we move. Now. They threw their packs into the speeder and took off again into the darkness. Behind them, the wreck of the drone burned like a small sun. As they sped away, Lyra whispered, "You should have let me die in that market. Now you'll die with me." Jason glanced at her, his face half lit by the dashboard lights. "Maybe," he said softly. "But at least we'll die doing something right." Lyra stared at him, a strange warmth in her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like that. For the first time in years, she felt something close to hope. The night stretched endlessly ahead, full of danger and uncertainty, but together, a human and an outcast alien raced across the stars, hunted, wounded, but unbroken. The desert stretched endless under a pale gray dawn. Thin mist rolled across the dunes like ghosts from another world. Jason gripped the controls of the speeder, his jaw tight, eyes scanning the horizon for movement. Beside him, Lyra sat silently, her silver eyes half closed, her body trembling from exhaustion and pain. The wound from removing the tracker had not fully healed, but she refused to rest. They had been running for hours. Every few minutes, Jason checked the scanner. Sometimes it was quiet, sometimes a blip appeared and vanished again. Whoever was tracking them wasn't far. "Drink some water," Jason said quietly, passing her the canister. Lyra shook her head. "You need it more." "Just take it," he said. "You'll collapse before they catch us." She obeyed finally, sipping a little. Her voice was soft. "You don't understand how far they'll go. The Trade Guild owns half this planet. If they think I'm alive, they'll send a unit, maybe more." Jason nodded. "Then we make sure they regret it." The wind picked up, blowing sharp grains of sand that stung his face. Ahead, the dunes turned rocky, forming natural canyons and tunnels carved by centuries of storms. Jason slowed the speeder, eyes lighting up. "Perfect place to hide." Lyra looked around, uncertain. "These canyons are dangerous. Many ships vanish here." Jason smiled faintly. "Then they won't find us either." He guided the speeder into a narrow path between cliffs. The sound of engines faded, replaced by echoing wind. Strange shapes, pillars, ruins, and carved statues lined the path. They looked ancient, built long before either human or Valoran civilization existed. Lyra stared at them, awe softening her voice. "These stones, they're older than my people. Some say they belong to the first ones. No one comes here anymore." Jason parked the speeder behind a rock formation shaped like a giant hand reaching toward the sky. He turned off the engine. Silence filled the air, broken only by Lyra's slow breathing. "Rest," he said. "We'll move when it's dark again." Lyra hesitated but finally leaned against a smooth rock, her head tilting back. Jason sat across from her, cleaning his blaster, but his eyes kept drifting toward her. She looked fragile in the soft light, her white hair tangled, her blue-silver skin faintly glowing. She was alien, completely different from him, yet somehow familiar. After a while, she spoke. "I keep thinking about the drone," she said softly. "If they send a machine, next they'll send men." Jason looked up. "Let them. I've dealt with worse." Lyra's lips curved slightly. "You're too calm for someone being hunted," he shrugged. "Calm doesn't mean fearless. Just means I've learned what matters." She tilted her head. "And what matters to you?" Jason's eyes met hers. "Doing the right thing, even when no one else will." For a moment, neither spoke. The air felt thick with something neither could name. Then Lyra said quietly, "That's why I studied humans. You do things that make no sense, like saving someone who brings you danger." Before Jason could answer, a faint hum filled the air. He froze. "Engines," he whispered. Lyra's eyes widened. She climbed to her feet, scanning the sky. 3 small craft appeared above the cliffs, black and sleek, marked with the golden insignia of the Trade Guild. "They found us," she breathed. Jason grabbed his gear. "Then we move." The crafts landed nearby and armored figures stepped out. Bounty hunters, tall and reptilian, their eyes hidden behind visors. One of them shouted through a speaker, "Human! Surrender the fugitive and you may live." Jason ducked behind the rocks, whispering, "Stay low. Don't move until I say." Lyra nodded, fear and resolve mixing in her face. The hunters spread out, scanning the area. Jason waited until one passed close, then fired. One precise shot to the leg. The alien dropped with a roar. The others fired back, laser bolts striking the stone around him. Lyra covered her ears as the sound echoed through the canyon. Dust and smoke filled the air. Jason rolled to another cover, reloading fast. "We can't win a full fight," he shouted. "We run." Lyra nodded, and together they sprinted deeper into the canyon. The hunters followed, shouting commands. Jason grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her through a narrow gap in the rocks. Behind them, an explosion shook the ground. One of the hunters had fired a plasma grenade. Rocks fell, blocking part of the canyon. Jason turned, panting. "That'll slow them down." Lyra looked back at the rising smoke. "You risked your life again." He smiled faintly. "You keep saying that like I didn't notice." They reached an open area lit by the morning sun. In the center stood a giant stone arch covered in strange glowing symbols. Lyra stopped, her eyes wide. "This is a transport gate. Ancient Valoran design. It shouldn't still work." Jason looked at her. "Can it take us somewhere safe?" "Maybe," she said. "If I can power it." He handed her a small energy cell from his blaster pack. "Then do it." "We're out of time." Lyra placed the cell inside the gate's core. The symbols began to glow brighter, humming with deep energy. The ground trembled slightly. Behind them, the hunters appeared again, firing as they ran. Jason pulled Lyra behind him, returning fire. "Hurry!" Lyra's fingers flew across the control panel, sparks dancing around her hands. The arch pulsed with light, brighter, stronger, until it formed a shimmering wall of blue energy. "It's ready," she cried. Jason grabbed her hand. "Then we go together." They jumped through the gate just as a laser bolt flew past their heads. The world flashed white, and then vanished. Light surrounded them like liquid fire. Jason felt his body stretch, twist, and then snap back together as the transport gate spat them out into a strange, glowing chamber. He fell hard onto a cold stone floor. Lyra landed beside him, coughing, her silver hair sparkling with dust. For a few seconds, neither spoke. The air hummed softly. Then Jason opened his eyes and froze. They were inside what looked like a massive underground temple. Pillars carved with alien symbols reached high into darkness. The walls shimmered faintly with blue light, like starlight trapped in crystal veins. It was silent except for the low hum of energy running beneath the floor. "Where are we?" Jason asked, standing slowly. Lyra's eyes moved across the symbols. Her voice trembled. This is one of the first sanctums. I thought they were only legends." Jason brushed dust off his jacket. "Guess legends like to hide in canyons." She ignored his humor, walking toward a tall stone console at the center of the room. Strange patterns pulsed on its surface when she touched it. "These gates were built thousands of years ago," she whispered. "My ancestors used them to travel between worlds before war destroyed their empire. No one remembers how they worked anymore." Jason looked around carefully. "So we're safe. For now." Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, the hunters won't find this place easily." "It's shielded." Jason sat on a broken stone, catching his breath. "Good. Then you can finally tell me what really happened to you." Lyra turned to him, her face calm but heavy with emotion. "You already know part of it. I was a scientist once. But I wasn't just any researcher. I led Project Solaris." Jason frowned. "What's that?" She hesitated, then said softly, "A secret experiment to create harmony between humans and Valorans. We were studying shared empathy, a biological link that could let two species feel each other's emotions. It was meant to end conflict." Jason leaned forward. "You were building peace." "Yes," she said bitterly. "But peace isn't profitable. The guild wanted stronger workers, not understanding. When I refused to weaponize my research, they accused me of treason. I destroyed everything before they could use it, but not before they captured me." Jason felt anger burn inside him. "So they erased your name and sold you like an object?" Lyra nodded, her voice trembling. "They erased my identity. They said no Valoran should ever feel for a human. But when I looked at you, when you freed me, I felt that same link we were trying to create." Jason blinked, confused. "You mean?" She stepped closer, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "Yes, the bond still exists in me. When you freed me in the market, something inside my neural core reacted. I felt your emotions, your anger, your compassion, your pain." Jason looked at her, his chest tight. "You can feel what I feel?" Lyra nodded slowly. Not all the time. But when you're near, it's stronger. It's how I knew you were telling the truth, that you didn't want to use me. Jason stared into her eyes. Then we're connected. Yes, she whispered. And that connection will make us both targets. The guild will want to capture you too now, to study you. Jason ran a hand through his hair. Great, so I just went from helping someone to becoming part of an alien science project. Lyra almost smiled. That's one way to say it. Jason chuckled softly, then turned serious again. So what now? We can't stay here forever? Lyra moved her hand over the console again. The blue light flared, showing a holographic map of the system. There's another gate deep under the northern wastes. If we reach it, we could escape off-world before the guild tracks us. But it's far and 2 days of travel on foot. Jason nodded. Then we start tonight. But before they could move, a deep rumble echoed through the temple. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jason raised his blaster instantly. What was that? Lyra checked the console, panic flashing in her eyes. They found the gate's signal. Someone reactivated the outer relay. They're opening a new portal, Jason cursed. How long? Minutes. Jason ran to the gate they'd entered from. Its surface shimmered again, flickering with gold light. They're coming, he said. We need another exit. Lyra's hands danced over the console. There's a maintenance tunnel below this platform. Ancient, but maybe stable. Jason nodded. Show me. A hidden floor panel slid open, revealing a spiral stairway leading into darkness. He motioned for her to go first. You first. I'll cover the back. Lyra hesitated, her voice soft. Jason, thank you. For what? For believing I was more than a slave. Jason looked at her, his face calm. You were never a slave. They just forgot what freedom looks like. As she descended into the dark, the golden light behind them grew brighter. The hunters were stepping through the gate. Jason followed quickly, sealing the hatch behind him. The tunnel was narrow, lit by faint blue crystals. Their footsteps echoed softly. For the first time, Jason felt the bond Lyra spoke of, a strange pulse in his chest, like their hearts beat in rhythm. They didn't know where the tunnel led. But one thing was certain, the guild was closer than ever, and their secrets were no longer safe. Together they vanished deeper underground, carrying a connection powerful enough to change two worlds, if they could survive long enough to reveal it. The tunnels trembled as the portal above roared to life. Jason and Lyra ran through the dim corridor, their footsteps echoing like drumbeats of fear. The ancient walls glowed faintly blue, guiding them through the dark. Somewhere behind them, heavy boots clanged. The hunters had crossed the gate. Lyra clutched the data crystal she had pulled from the console. They've locked onto our trail, she said breathlessly. The Sanctum systems are too old to hide us anymore. Jason's jaw tightened. Then we make our own defense. They reached a massive underground hall. Starlight streamed in through a crack in the ceiling, painting the stone floor in soft silver. Broken machines and glowing ruins filled the space, the remnants of something ancient and powerful. Jason looked around quickly. If we hold them here, can you shut the gate? Lyra nodded. I can overload the portal's energy relay, but I'll need time. Jason smiled faintly. Then I'll give you time, she hesitated. You'll die if you stay, he shrugged. Not if I'm lucky. Lyra wanted to argue, but there was no time. She ran toward the nearest console and began connecting wires, her fingers moving fast. Jason took cover behind a fallen column, checking his blaster's charge. The blue lights flickered as the hum of the portal grew louder in the distance. Moments later, the first hunter appeared, a tall reptilian figure in golden armor. It raised its weapon and shouted, "Return the fugitive, human." Jason answered with a single shot. The bolt hit the alien's shoulder, sending it crashing into a wall. Two more hunters stormed in, their plasma rifles glowing red. Jason fired again, using the ancient pillars for cover. Sparks and light filled the chamber. Lyra's voice called out over the noise. Jason, they're too many. Just keep working, he shouted back. I'll handle them. He ducked as a bolt exploded beside him, heat washing over his face. He returned fire, aiming with sharp precision. The hunters advanced slowly, forcing him back toward Lyra's console. Then one of them threw a grenade. Jason reacted instantly, diving forward and pushing Lyra to the ground. The explosion ripped through the chamber, sending dust and debris flying. When the smoke cleared, Jason groaned and pushed himself up. His arm was bleeding, a piece of metal lodged near his shoulder. Lyra crawled to him, eyes wide. "You're hurt." He grinned weakly. "Nothing new." She tore a strip of fabric from her sleeve and pressed it to his wound. "You can't fight like this." He met her gaze, steady and calm. "I can until you finish that relay." Something inside her broke at those words, that quiet courage. She stood and returned to the console, her hands glowing faintly as she touched the controls. Sparks flew. The old machine screamed as energy built inside it. Jason reloaded and fired again, taking down another hunter. But more came pouring through the archway like shadows. He moved between the pillars, using the terrain to his advantage, his mind calm despite the chaos. Lyra's voice trembled. "Almost there. I just need one more surge." "Make it count," he yelled. One of the hunters got close enough to swing a blade. Jason blocked it with his forearm, pain shooting through his body. He twisted, kicked the alien back, and shot it point blank. The weapon overheated, glowing red. He dropped behind a column, breathing hard. His vision blurred for a moment at too much blood loss. But then he saw Lyra struggling to pull a heavy lever on the console. Without thinking, he ran to her side and helped her push. With a thunderous sound, the energy core burst to life. A beam of blue light shot up toward the ceiling crack, shaking the entire chamber. Lyra turned to him, shouting over the noise. "It's ready." "The overload will destroy the gate, but it will take everything around it too." Jason nodded. "Then we leave before it blows." They ran toward a secondary exit, but a final hunter stepped in their way, taller and stronger than the others, its armor shining gold. It aimed its rifle straight at Lyra. Jason didn't hesitate. He threw himself between them. The blast hit him square in the chest. Lyra screamed, catching him before he fell. "Jason!" He coughed, blood staining his lips, but his eyes met hers. "You need to go now." Tears filled her eyes. "I can't leave you." He smiled faintly. "You have to. You're the only one who can finish what we started." The ground shook harder. Light exploded from the portal, tearing the air apart. Lyra's trembling hands touched his face. "I feel your heart," she whispered. "It's still strong." Jason's voice was weak but steady. "Then remember it. Make it mean something." She leaned down, pressed her forehead to his, and whispered, "I promise." Then she stood, fury replacing fear. She turned toward the golden hunter, her eyes blazing silver. Energy crackled from her palms as she unleashed a pulse of light that shattered its armor and threw it against the wall. The temple began to collapse. Stones rained from above. Lyra lifted Jason's body and dragged him toward the exit, her strength powered by pure will. Behind them, the overloaded portal exploded, a storm of blue and gold fire swallowing the hunters and the hall in a single blinding flash. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the desert. Lyra stumbled out of the tunnel, falling to her knees, Jason still in her arms. The sky was quiet again, the danger gone. She looked down at him, her tears catching the morning sun. "You gave me freedom," she whispered. "Now I'll give your sacrifice meaning." The wind carried her words across the dunes as the sun rose. And in that light, Lyra knew this was not the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. The sun climbed slowly above the red dunes, turning the desert gold. The wind whispered across the broken stones of the ancient ruins, carrying dust and silence, and one woman's quiet breathing. Lyra sat on her knees beside Jason's still body, his jacket draped over him like a shroud. The explosion had ended hours ago. The hunters were gone, the portal destroyed, and the temple lay buried under the sand. Only she and the morning light remained. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to Jason's chest. For a long moment she said nothing, just listened. Then her eyes widened. A faint rhythm. "Weak but real, Jason," she whispered, her voice breaking. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a small vial, a glowing blue serum, part of her old experiments from Project Solaris. "It's not tested," she murmured, "but if there's a chance." Without hesitation, she injected the serum into his arm. The glow spread slowly through his veins, mixing with human blood. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then Jason gasped, shallow, painful, but alive. Lyra let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Tears slipped down her face. "You stubborn human," she whispered. "You really don't know when to quit." Jason's eyes fluttered open, dazed. "Did we make it?" Lyra smiled through her tears. "Yes, the gate is gone. The hunters too. You kept your promise." He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his chest. "And you?" he asked weakly. You're safe? Lyra looked toward the desert horizon. Safe, for now. But the guild will come again. They'll sense the energy burst and know I survived. Jason struggled to speak. Then we run, she shook her head. No, we build, he frowned, confused. Build? Lyra looked at him, eyes glowing softly with determination. You showed me what I couldn't see before. I spent my life believing logic could save the galaxy. Equations, laws, science. But it was compassion that changed everything. You changed everything, Jason gave a small smile. Guess humans are good for something after all. Lyra laughed quietly, the sound warm and soft. More than you think, she helped him stand. They walked together toward the remains of the speeder that had survived the blast, half buried in the sand. Lyra began repairing it using scavenged parts from the ruins. Jason watched her work, admiring the focus in her movements. Even after everything, pain, fear, loss, she moved with purpose. After some time, he asked softly, What will you do now? Lyra paused. There's a hidden colony beyond the wastes. Refugees, exiles, scientists who escaped the guild's control. If I can reach them, I can rebuild my research, the right way this time. I can finish Project Solaris, Jason nodded. You mean that empathy link? Yes, she said. But not just for study. For unity. If we can connect even one Valoran and one human at the heart, like you and me, it could change everything. Jason looked at the endless horizon. A world where no one's bought or sold. I'd like to see that, Lyra smiled softly. Then stay alive long enough to see it. The speeder roared to life. They climbed aboard, the desert wind sweeping past them. The sun was higher now, its light warm on their faces. For the first time, Jason allowed himself to breathe easily. The pain in his chest was still there, but it felt distant, almost insignificant compared to the peace settling inside him. As they rode toward the northern hills, Lyra looked back one last time at the buried temple. A faint glow still pulsed beneath the sand, the dying heart of the old portal. She whispered quietly, Thank you, ancestors. The old world is gone. A new one begins. Hours passed. The landscape shifted from sand to stone, from red to silver. In the far distance, a cluster of lights appeared, the hidden colony. Lyra's heart lifted. Jason noticed the look on her face. That's home? She nodded. For now. Until we build something better. When they arrived, guards with metallic masks stepped forward, weapons ready. But when they saw Lyra, a Valoran scientist, helping a wounded human, they froze in shock. Lyra raised her hands slowly. We come in peace. We bring proof that empathy works, and that it can save us all. The guards lowered their weapons. One of them whispered, Project Solaris. It's real. Lyra nodded, tears filling her eyes. It survived. They guided Jason inside. Medics surrounded him, working quickly. Lyra stayed nearby, watching until his breathing steadied again. When he finally looked at her, he smiled faintly. Guess we're really starting over, she nodded. Together. That night, as the colony lights flickered like stars in the canyon, Lyra stood on the balcony overlooking the desert. She held Jason's broken chain in her hand, the same one he had freed her from. It glimmered faintly in the moonlight. She whispered to the wind, You gave me freedom. Now I'll give the galaxy hope. In the distance, lightning rolled across the horizon, painting the night sky silver. A new dawn was coming, not just for her or for Jason, but for both their worlds. And as the first stars appeared, Lyra smiled. For the first time in her life, she wasn't running from the past. She was walking toward a future they had built together, a future where compassion, not power, ruled the stars.